Ciao, I'm Marco and I'm here to tell you a little bit about Quarantine Piano. This is a Kontakt sample library I created using the Yamaha U3 that you see behind me, and it's also the first time I tried to sample an instrument. So I tried to keep things simple. Let's take a look at what's inside the instruments folder, and as you see here, you get 5 piano patches, but there's a lot of other stuff as well. So this is the interface. You have the volume sliders here for the microphones I used. This is a stereo pair of Aston Starlights in vintage mode that I placed in front, and a mono signal from the Rode NT2000, which I placed at the back of the instrument right in the middle. Then you get the volume for the release triggers and the stereo width, which never hurts to have in a piano. There are just two dynamic layers, no round robins, so it's very simple. I might try and create a deeper sampled version of the piano in the future, but as a first instrument, I'm already happy that it sounds like a piano. So I think goal number one has been somewhat achieved. So, and this is what the piano sounds like. This is a brighter patch, which is closer to the real piano. There is also a warmer variation of this patch, which has the same samples, but I've added some tape warmth and an EQ to shave off some of those mid-high frequencies and a different scripting inside. And this is what it sounds like. So a relatively subtle difference, but it's just another flavor of the same thing. Yeah. So in this version one, I placed the microphones where the hammer hits the strings. So the sound is a bit more percussive and bright. I created also a second version in which I've lowered down the microphones to capture more of the resonance of the body, just to capture a different tone, a different feel or flavor of the piano. So as you can hear, it's a little bit less aggressive, still a bright piano because that's what the Yamaha U3 is. Then moving on, we get the felt piano version 1. So a nice intimate tone, and then a version 2 as well. So even in the second version, you can still hear that sort of crisp attack of the hammer hitting the felt. Moving on, we got the extra folder. And in the extras folder, you get some sort of utilities. I would use these patches as underlayers to add some more realism and depth to tracks. This is the environmental noises patch, and this is what it sounds like. So it's literally the sound of my brother going like this on the seat. And this is to compensate for the lack of the human element that you get when you play a sample library. I think you miss that dimension of the pianist actually moving behind the piano. And I love to hear it when I listen to recordings from Niels Fram or Oliver Arnolds. You can clearly perceive they're there. And, they've been recorded with the piano. It's not just the pure sound of the piano. So to compensate for this, I thought I'd record some of these environmental noises. And there are 4 samples of this. They all have their own key and their own volume slider. So you could actually blend them in together if you want a busier effect. like a pianist that jumps on the seat. And then there is also the room tone, which is just more noise and dirt. And you can actually hear the TV from upstairs. So this is just a little way of adding some more depth to a track, and somehow I think it instantly sounds more intimate. And here is another patch on the same idea, and this is exactly what it says: a mechanical piano. So it's the sound of the hammers and all of the mechanisms that make the piano. It's like playing a piano without strings. And for this one, I sampled all of the 88 keys of the piano. You still get the release trigger volume, so you can, create a different balance between the key being pressed and released. So if you have a sampled piano that you really like, but it's very clean, you could layer this underneath, and I think it instantly gains that sort of intimate tone and an extra depth. So for example, here I have this Steinway piano that comes with the Logic library. Which is a beautiful sampled piano, but it's very clean. And I like a bit of dirt. So if you layer that mechanical piano underneath, this is what it sounds like. So I think it instantly gains that extra dimension, and it tricks your brain into thinking that it was actually recorded this way. So you give a more intimate tone because you can actually hear those little noises, even if it wasn't sampled that way. Obviously now it's a bit exaggerated, then you can blend it in the volume the way you want. You could also use the stereo width to match the stereo image of the piano, so it sounds even more realistic. And moving on, you get a couple of staccato patches, felt and normal piano. They don't have round robins, so you would get that machine gun effect if you were to use them on their own. I would use them as layers to make a sound more percussive or help a piano cut through the mix. Or they're really fun to play with arpeggiators. And then moving on, we got the flickering piano. This is one of those ideas at the early stages that I'll try and develop in their own instrument in the future. It's just a playable piano. And in this case, you get the same sample set as the Quarantine Piano version 1. But I think the magic of this happens when you sustain it. So this is based on 3 different layers, which are different repetitions of the notes. And since they've been spread out throughout the keyboard, they repeat at slightly different time. So, the higher the pitch, the faster it will go. The lower the pitch, the slower it'll go. In this way, you create these sort of dancing textures of the piano. Each layer has its own volume, so you can blend them in how you want. Or you can add some effect, which is a blend of different effects to spice up the sound a little bit. And as you can hear, sometimes it starts making its own little melodies. So hopefully it can inspire you, and you can use those in your tracks as well. This is the basic version. Let's move on to the delay version. In this case, the repetitions have been created with delays instead, and the result is a bit denser. So this is actually really good for textures. And I could literally go on forever. It's actually very relaxing to play. I think it's quite an inspiring instrument, and I like the fact that it's somewhat unpredictable and it goes beyond the grid. So you've got something that you have no control over. And I think sometimes it's useful to have this sort of stuff within a track. Moving on, we get the felt piano version, which has the same patterns as the other one, but it's just with the felt piano. And you could also MIDI map the sliders to a controller, and then you can automate them and change the balance of every layer throughout the track, making them come in whenever you want. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this. Then there's the delay version for this too. And that's the Flickering Piano. Move on, otherwise I could stay here forever. So moving on, we get the Harmonic Piano. And in this case, I've recorded the same notes as the normal piano, but in a different way. So pressing the key very lightly, it doesn't make any sound, but the strings are free to vibrate. And when you hit the key an octave above, these strings start to resonate with that one. And you take out those harmonics, which are what I've actually captured to create this instrument. With a fast attack, you get some sort of a harp sounding piano. Another instrument that is quite fun to play with arpeggiators as well. And then you can soften the attack if you want to get a different effect. And then you got some effects here to play with. It's a blend of effects, so there's a lot of stuff going on under the hood. So although these are very simple instruments, I think you can still take them a long way to try and shape them how you want them. And of course, they're not really meant to be sounding great out of the box. These are just starting points that hopefully will give you enough inspiration. And there is also the soft version here. And finally, we get the harmonic felt piano. In this case, you get the 2 layers of harmonics here. And the base of the instrument is a muted version of the felt piano. So it's already quite interesting as it is. It's just the harder dynamic of the felt piano, but I muted the sound so it dies off very quickly. And you can blend in this first layer, which is the harmonics captured with the Aston microphone, so it's stereo. And you can bring in the second layer as well, which is the Rode microphone. And in this case, I put a longer attack, so it jumps in slightly later. Then you can mess with some tape distortion if you want, and some reverb. Because why not? Moving on, we get the sound design patches, and here you get a lot of weirdness you can play with. I'm just going to go through these quite quickly, try not to waste too much time. So that's busy hive. Moving on, harmonic organ. Low Endless is a patch that uses a sample of the piano spread out through the entire keyboard, and this piano sample has been processed together with the sine wave. It starts sounding like an electric piano, but also it gives you this very rich low end. If you played it down here, it's got this very deep sub frequencies content that it's great for sub layers for basses, and in this case I added some ADSR so you can shape the sound how you want. Moving on, we get this. Clearly not a piano. And then we get the sine piano, which is using those piano samples I just said. Clean version. You get the dirty version, which has some distortion in the sine wave. And this one is much more distorted. This one goes to 11. Oh yeah, and it starts at 10. Crazy sound, this one. So it starts very loud and it goes even louder, adding distortion, volume, and some reverb. Do with this as you please, but please be careful. And finally we get the upright down. loads of reversed stuff and drones. And finally, we get to the percussion patches. And here you get this sort of processed drum kit that I created with sound material from the piano. And then Foley percussion, which are just unprocessed noises. And since these have a lot of low end, if you use the cutoff here, some resonance and reverb, you can actually make them become like subhits. And finally, we get to the hybrid rhythms, which are just loops that I've created, processing the sounds in all sorts of ways. And you get these weird rhythms that are tempo sync to the DAW. So just little ways of enhancing a beat with these rhythmical elements. So that was it. I hope you guys enjoyed this very boring walkthrough of Quarantine Piano. This is just the beginning of a journey for me, so I would really appreciate it if you could leave some comments down below to let me know what you thought about this library and give me some feedback. I'll try to create better instruments in the future, but in the meantime, I really hope this library will be useful for you and it'll bring some inspiration for your tracks. If you made it this far, thank you very much for watching, and until next time, ciao! No, I'm joking, I'm still here. Ciao. Oh, ok, questo devo smettere di giocarci perché sennò esco pazzo. Bene, mettiamo via anche queste robe perché sennò continuo a fare casino. Bene, ci siamo? Siamo solo io e te, maledetta videocamera del merda? Sì, allora beviamoci su. Bene. Ok. Perché continuo a cercare di dire cose che non ha senso? Ok. Brighter. More brighter, che cazzo dico? Ok. Okay. So that was the piano. So this was it, isn't it? It is, isn't it? Okay. Okay. Ciao. Poi aiuta. Ok. Ciao, I'm Marco, and this is probably take 1000.